Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Suzanne Dibble here, data protection law expert, coming to you raw and uncut. And today I just want to bring you up to date with the ICO and their attitude towards compliance with GDPR. It was their Data Protection Practitioners Annual Conference today in Manchester, and I listened in for a while to the first few speakers, and there was a live stream, in case you're wondering. I didn't just commute back to Manchester from Thailand to watch that, and just wanted to bring you up to speed on the ICO's view of the world according to GDPR. And it's nothing really different to what I've said before, but there were some interesting points that came out of it, and I think it's a useful reminder for all of us. So Elizabeth Denham, who is the Information Commissioner, started off the conference and said a few very interesting things. Firstly, that in her view, and indeed it should be our view, there isn't a deadline. People are talking about the 25th of May as a deadline, and for her it isn't a deadline. Arguably that's when the real work starts, because what they're expecting is more data breach reports as business owners become more conscious of what a data breach is, and also with the backdrop of the increased sanctions and increased fines of not reporting a data breach. If you watched the video that I did yesterday about data breaches, you'll know that if you are supposed to notify a data breach and you don't, then that potentially carries a fine of 10 million euros or 2% of your global turnover, whichever is the higher. And do go and watch that video, because you don't have to report every single breach. It's only in certain circumstances, so go and watch that video if you haven't done that. But they're expecting more data breach reports, and they're expecting more complaints because consumers will be becoming more savvy about their data protection rights. And as I did a video about this a while ago, but it's today that the ICO are kicking off their consumer-facing campaign, raising awareness about GDPR. And as I said in the video that I did a while ago, where I was explaining that the ICO were about to do this campaign, that's why, in my view, it's so important to start taking steps to comply if you haven't already, because at this point, very, very shortly, your customers are going to be asking you questions about how you're looking after their data. And if you don't know what they're talking about, or you can't show that you're working towards compliance, and you don't show that you're treating their data protection seriously, then you really do risk losing customers and at the least damaging the trust that your customers will have in you. So because the Information Commissioner's Office are expecting more in terms of more data breach reports, more complaints, they are building their team, and they will be adding a number of enforcement officers to the ICO team. However, the Information Commissioner did repeat again that the ICO's approach is very much with the carrot, not with the stick. They really do want to work with businesses in helping businesses to become GDPR compliant, not try to trip them up and then levy a big fine. It's not about a revenue raising exercise, and hence, with the self-reporting and the reporting of the data breaches, someone asked in the group, as a follow-on from my video about data breaches, what will the ICO actually do when they receive a data breach? Well, they will of course investigate that, and if they see that you have not complied, and that's what's caused the data breach, then they will give you solutions as to how to comply, and will more than likely give you a period of time in which to show your compliance. If, however, you don't report that data breach, and a consumer reports you, and then the ICO goes to investigate, then you'll find that you're dealing with a very different situation. So that's what happens if you don't report the breach, and if you do report the breach, then the ICO will more than likely work with you to try and get to the bottom of that data breach, work out why it happened, help you to put new systems and procedures in place that mean that data breach won't be repeated, etc. So that's what the Information Commissioner's Office said, and she did again repeat that the fines will be reserved for the most serious breaches. So again, I mean, this has always been my standpoint right from the outset of creating this group. Indeed, it's one of the reasons that I created the group, was that I was just fed up of seeing the headline fines and the scaremongering of 20 million. And I guess probably the reason that people do it is because it's shorthand for you've got to pay attention to this. And of course you do, even as small businesses, we do have to pay attention to this for a number of reasons. But the risk of being fined is probably, not in the top 5 of those reasons, because in my view, for what most small businesses are doing with data, as long as you're working towards compliance, if there is a slight non-compliance, you're not going to get fined. I say the ICO work with a carrot, not the stick. What the fines do is represent the seriousness with which the European Commission and indeed the UK in leaving Europe, the seriousness with which governments are taking data protection. And that's why we all, even though we might be small businesses, we might be micro businesses, we might be solopreneurs, we still have to take it seriously, because at the end of the day, we're in charge of other people's data, and as we know, data is now the most valuable asset in the world, so it is worthy of that protection. Now then, Margot James, who's the Minister for Digital and Creative Industries, came on after the Information Commissioner, and she had a few interesting things to say, but the main thing that I picked up on from her was she was talking about data portability, specifically in the context of social media platforms. And I imagine that this is in the wake of the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica case. And I certainly got the impression that what she was envisaging was a world where if Facebook users decided that enough was enough, Facebook should have had more controls in place that meant that what happened couldn't have happened, and they decided to move to a different social media platform. There should be some way in which I could port all of the data that I've uploaded. I joined Facebook in 2007, so that's, goodness me, 11 years, and I put quite a bit of stuff onto Facebook. There should be some way of me being able to port all of that data onto a different social media platform, which astonished me. Just the scope of that exercise astonished me. And there was actually a question from somebody in the audience who said, how on earth is that going to work in practice? And she said, yes, the exact practicalities will need to be worked out sector by sector, I'm sure working with the advice of the ICO. So, I mean, what a technical operation that would be when, 11 years of all of the data that I've added to Facebook, and I'm just one of their however many billion users, and then to try and migrate that over to another platform when they're all, set out in such different ways. I thought that was astonishing, actually. But presumably, what they're thinking with that is that if there is another Facebook case, and people think, right, I don't want to use Facebook anymore, but equally, I don't want to lose my 11 years of data that I've been inputting into that platform. I certainly would not close my Facebook account lightly because of everything that's on there. But if users could, at a push of a button, transport all of that data onto a different social media platform, well, that would be a complete game changer, wouldn't it? And it would certainly redress the balance of power between the big social media players and and governments, and the people and other social media platforms. So how exactly that would work, goodness only knows, but great principle. How it will work in practice will remain to be seen. So they were the main sort of interesting points from the first bit of the conference. But I think the main things to think about are Yes, the 25th of May is when GDPR comes into force, but that is not the end game. You know, as I've always been saying in my 2-hour training and throughout these videos, GDPR is not about a legislative tick box ticking exercise. It's about much more than that. It's about thinking of data protection in every step of your business's journey, and you know, I say the things that they're likely to expect more of: data breach reports, more complaints. You know, we will have to watch this space, won't we? But they're certainly expecting more, and you know, that's what I'll be doing after the 25th of May. I'll be keeping a watching brief on what is going on in practice when GDPR comes into force. So it might be that I don't end my daily videos on the 25th of May. I might keep going. Anyway, so that's all I want to say about that. And just the final point, you know, remember, ICO, carrot, not the stick. If you're working towards compliance, which I know so many of you in this group are doing, if you are, you know, reporting breaches when you need to, and you know, taking all the steps that you can towards compliance, then you will find that the ICO will work with you, not against you, which is, you know, that's good to know, isn't it? It's comforting. Good stuff. Okay, well, I will leave it there, and got a few videos on that I consciously want to do. So I think I've got the next few days lined up. But as ever, if you've got any other thoughts about what you'd like me to do a video on, then there is a note in the files section of this Facebook group where you can add any requests to that. And again, you know, I've seen lots of questions in the group about individual circumstances. I just can't answer them all. I'm sure you can appreciate that. If I see that there are a number of people interested in that, I will do a video about it. Otherwise, I just can't answer individual questions. If you do want that level of support, then you can think about joining my elite Small Business Legal Academy membership. And in that level of service, I do guarantee to answer your questions. So if you want to know about that, then you can email the support team at support@suzannedibble.com, and they will give you some more information about that. The elite membership, I believe, is still at a slightly discounted rate until the 25th of April, but the support team can give you more details on that. Okay, awesomeness. Thank you as ever for all of your engagement, and I'll see you tomorrow.